Okay.
Yeah.
So this we have understood the sampling issues, the ethical issues in the qualitative research, how you should be tackling those issues. And then we have seen the data collection methods. There are various data collection methods, like there is an in-depth interview, there is a focus group discussion. We have learned the advantages, disadvantages, or in what situation you should approach, you should use which qualitative data collection approach. There's also participant observation. If time permits, I'll take a session on participant observation also. And then we discussed regarding the various templates for taking the field notes, template or how you should manage your data, because data management is also very important. We have learned how to do the transcription, how to manage the transcription process, how to do the quality check of those transcription. And you have done the in-depth interview also one-to-one. You have shared your recording also. And then now I assume that we have got the transcript. So maybe towards the end of the activity today assignment, we'll assign that transcription process to you people. But since I'll be demonstrating it on one of the project, which is the file erases project, and Ria did that whole coding and analysis part. So we'll see what are the different coding methods. So I'll start with the first cycle coding methods. There are two cycle coding methods, first cycle and second cycle coding methods. And like grounded theory, remember when we were seeing that ringing bell ethnographic example, so the author has written that they have used a grounded theory framework for analysis. So that analysis is again, if you are using, which we will see, but I'm just telling you, just sensitizing you that if you use a second cycle coding method in the analysis, then generally the approach towards the data analysis is that of a grounded theory approach. So let me share my screen. So what we'll start with this first cycle coding methods. So being a student, we all have done during our UG period or our PG period something like this. Any important things we highlight. We also paste sticky notes. We also use multicolor. If you see girls, especially while they read, they use multicolor highlighter. Some line in orange, some in red, not red, probably the yellow or some other color. You underline it, and you make notes also. In the side also you write something very important thing. So these are like making notes whenever we mark something on the notes. Yes, Dr. Ravi is right. And you mark something very important in the books and in your notes also. So we all have these memories with us. So this is more like a qualitative. So this picture which you see, this you can say roughly this is the way you have to approach a coding. Whenever you see a transcript, you have to highlight it, you have to write something which is an analytical memo of your or your reflection, the thing which you have understood, which is important, which is not so important. So these things you will keep on mentioning as you go through this process of coding. Same activity, we will repeat it over QDA. This highlighting and giving a name to it and explaining it further and then going further ahead. So let's before we start with the actual coding process, let's play a simple game. So on this, there are many pictures you can see here. So you can write down here only in the chat box the name of the various animals which you can see in this picture. What are the various animals? So mammal, yes. Reptile, lion, kitchen items, true. But animals, owl is there. There is a uh, Can I see the chat box? Yes. Tiger, octopus, goat, squirrel, tiger, horse, cat, camel, deer, fish, elephant, lots of names. Okay. So good. So these are the names. We have just written the names of these items which are there in those picture. So now, if I ask you to club these animals according to any of your chosen criteria, so how you can club it? You have done this exercise also, like free listing and pile sorting. Pile sorting is mainly clubbing only. When you, based on any criteria, you club similar items together, which you think using any criteria. So sea animal, cat, bat, rat. Okay. Mammal, reptiles can be one classification. Okay. So you can, if I use this carnivore, herbivore, or omnivore, you can use this as a criteria. As Dr. Aditya is writing, number of legs can be there. Dr. Paramita is writing vertebrate or invertebrate. Dr. Ravi has written mammals versus reptiles. Dr. Arun has written sea animals. So there are various ways to club this. Similar thing, flight versus non-flight. Yes. So you can see from participants only, there are multiple ways to club these. Similar thing, you will find it in the, yeah, colored versus monochrome. You can find these in case of a codes, and when you will merge those codes into the category, everyone will have their own way of merging these. So that's why we say that if if I ask you to do something like this, in when you have to arrange it in under the carnivore, herbivore, and omnivore. And in the previous question, I asked from you people, like how many groups on what color or on what basis you are making the category. So what is the difference between this approach and this approach, second approach? If I give you the inductive versus deductive, which is inductive and which is deductive? So if you are giving the, if I'm asking how many groups, second is deductive, true. How many groups if I have given the choice to you? So you will come up with many choices, the way you are typing in the chat box. But if I ask to put these animals in these three categories only, then it is deductive. So this is the deductive and difference between again deductive and inductive framework. And we have been, yes, Dr. Ravi and Dr. Priyanka, you are right. Dr. Ajay is also right. The first one is inductive and the second is deductive. So Dr. Yes, I think it is clear now what is a deductive framework and what is an inductive framework. So now can you see the difference between these two exercises? It's inductive versus deductive. Now if you look at these words, so there is annoyed, then upset, lost. Then you can see vibrant, creative, bitter, glad, vibrant again, motivated, dynamic, confident, and furious. Now, if I ask you to classify these into the negative and positive emotions. So, yes, can you do that into negative and positive? So, which are the positive one and which are the negative ones? Yes, first type all positives. So, which are positives?
Dynamic, glad,
Yeah, dynamic, glad,
motivated,
very true, motivated,
vibrant, creative,
and
confident.
very good. All good. And then rest of one will be yes. Dr. Arun has written about negative, annoyed, upset, lost, bitter, furious, negative, and dynamic, confident, motivated, creative. Dr. Prashant has written. So very right. And now here in this you have since framed it. So again, this we are what we are using. This is a deductive framework. Now, this was one of the news which was published that like women give free shots to people at US airport after being denied to carry alcohol. So can you frame the news looking at the headline? Like what must have been the news? Alcohol freebies. Yes. Again, if you it was just the news was like a viral video showed women offering free shots to passenger at US airport after security personnel stopped them from carrying large bottle of alcohol due to 100 ml rule that's been placed for years. And security officials chuckle at the Miami bound woman offer shots to passenger because they one of the passengers said that I am disappointed I wasn't there to participate. A social media user commented. Again, can you frame a headline looking at this news? If this is the news, like a 5-year-old Motorola phone saved a man's life by stopping a bullet from penetrating his skin during an armed robbery in Brazil. The doctor who treated the phone's owner said that the man only had a small bruise near his hip and was quickly discharged. He also shared the picture of the damaged Moto G5, which had a Hulk theme phone cover. So old is gold. Hulk the Motorola savior. Hulk to the rescue. Good. So now you have replaced this whole 5 sentences with one word, isn't it? You have replaced like old is gold, or you have replaced like Hulk the Motorola savior, or you have replaced like Hulk to the rescue. So this is the way we will approach the coding. You will see a paragraph and then you will replace that paragraph either with one line or either with few words, and we will see what are the different types of ways where you can do. So this is called roughly as a coding. So code traditionally, you see, there are computer codes. If you say this word code, generally the software engineer, they will think that we have to write codes for this software, for this program. Here coding is like giving short. It's a short phrase or in few words or a short phrase which you give to a paragraph or to few sentences just to condense your data. So basically this coding is the data condensation. You don't call it a data reduction. Why you don't call it as a data reduction? Because data reduction is a negative term. Whenever you say reduction means you are losing it out. Whenever you say condensation, that means that meaning is preserved and you are only trying to condense it. So again, this coding is a data condensation process. And this was the title. So again, you will see that whenever some news is there in the media, if you see the headline, whether it is in the social media or it is there in the newspaper, print media, or it is there in the electronic media, they work very, very meticulously on framing the title so that it should be catchy and people should. And that's why many times you will see that on YouTube or any this thing, when you see the caption, you will feel like opening that video. Yes, to catch attention. Very true. So that's why you will see that similar thing with you have to do with the selection of your words, with the selection of your codes, and with the selection of your title. To we are not baiting actually, but again, you want that your title or your theme should be catchy so that the people should, or the reader, or the in this our case reviewer is there. It should be catchy so that it should draw attention towards your manuscript or towards your work. So this qualitative data analysis, process-wise, whatever we have seen, like putting these similar item together, maybe inductively or deductively, or giving a name to a long passage, or trying to explain a short passage. All these processes which you have just seen, or in the beginning, the book, the underlining the book and highlighting it, process-wise, all the processes are similar, but concept-wise, we'll see, how the qualitative research approach is different. But again, if you can recall those processes, then those processes we are going to apply in the qualitative data analysis. So analysis, there are various types of analysis. We will learn more towards analysis after we do the coding part. So there is a content analysis, there is a thematic analysis, which is the most common type of analysis done. There is a textual analysis and there is a discourse analysis. So now we will start with the coding process and what are the tools for qualitative coding. So basically, I've told you what is a code. So code is a short phrase or words which you which you give to your data to reduce the not to reduce the data, to condense the data. So, coding, what are the tools for qualitative coding? So, you can do coding by hand. That is also known as the manual coding. That means if the transcripts, there are people who are like who does this coding by hand. If there are only 2 to 3 transcript, then this can be managed even without any software. Or you can do the coding with word processor. That is the Microsoft Word. But coding with software is essential these days, because generally you have got many transcript, and the data management is easy with software. And if you have to do the content analysis where you want to see the proportion of each codes, or if you want to make some map again, then these helps, these software helps. So that's why, although we will be telling you how to do the coding by hand and by word processor, but generally we recommend to do the coding with the help of a software. And since there are various software which are available, like there's a Atlas TI, there's a NVivo, there's a QDA Miner, but we will use QDA Miner, that free version, because it analyzes, and it is available free of cost. Otherwise, coding with ChatGPT. Coding with ChatGPT, we have like few of our residents, they were trying using the ChatGPT. But again, if you are using any AI also for coding, you put your flavor also. Because many times, if you're meaning whatever you are thinking and whatever ChatGPT is giving, if they coincide, then again you can, but it will act only as a support. Your role should be there in each part of, even when you are using an AI. So because till now we have been using I have been using, like we use NVivo and this thing, uh, but again you can take help. Especially this is helpful when you want a good name of your code. I think what I find, then ChatGPT suggests you good names, because if you are finding dearth of vocabulary and you are not able to think many words or many phrases, then it might help. Otherwise, it's not that difficult. You can do it. The over reliance should be avoided on ChatGPT. So again, if you solve this problem 2 plus 2, so what will be your answer, everyone? Please write in the chat box. So 4. Dr. Prashant has written 4. Priya has written 4. So everybody answer will be 4. But if you have to give a code to this word, yes, can someone read this?
The medicines cost Rs 1,000 per day, and additionally, I had to be taken to the doctor. It was very difficult for my husband as he's a daily wage worker and the expenses were very high. Each day I was given a drip and returned late home in the evening. My children used to stay hungry all day.
So if you have to replace, if you have to do the coding of these excerpt, then what will you write? Yes, please type in the chat box. Out of pocket expenditure for healthcare, Dr. Arun is writing. Visible and hidden cost of health. Financial burden. Out of pocket expenditure. Time consuming. Indirect cost. Socioeconomic status. So you can see there are various different gender bias in healthcare. So these are different answers. So again, the same thing which we discussed yesterday also, the quantitative finding will be same for everyone, but qualitative, the same data. If you analyze it and if someone else analyze, the coding book or the coding might differ. That's why you need 2 people to code the data, and you then make a consensus. Yes, Dr. Ravi is writing wages of woes of a daily wage earner. So there is a subjectivity in interpretation of this excerpt, and again we have seen that this is multiple reality. So reality is also different of all the researcher reality is different, and the worldview of participants is also different. So whenever we start with the qualitative analysis, there's a if you focus on this, initially there will be a lots of codes, means there will be too much of words, then you reduce that in the form of codes. So codes will be further condensation of those words. Then you further condense those codes by merging the similar codes into the category. And then you try finding out theme from that category. And if possible, you can generate a theory. But this theory generation is not always there. It may or may not be there depending on the data which you have collected. In this case, yes, for example, yes, can someone read this?
Interviewer, what challenges do you face while communicating with patients? Participant, one of the biggest challenges is the language barrier. Many of our patients don't speak the local language, and even when we try to explain things, they don't fully understand. I feel like I have to repeat myself several times and still they look confused. I also think that time is a major issue. During busy days, I only have a few minutes with each patient and I am not able to explain things in detail. It feels rushed, and I can tell that the patients are not able to process everything. It's frustrating for both of us because I want them to understand, but I just time.
Okay, thank you. Here, like it's written, most of our patients speak local language. It's by mistake, it's written don't speak. And here you see that again, if you have to code this, you can code each word or each sentence or each paragraph depending on the objective and depending on the type of code which you want to use. So now we have talked a lot about this coding and coding and coding. What is this coding? So basically, although here I have written it is a process of reducing the qualitative data. But again, if you go by the Saldana, he says that you should not use the word reduce, rather you should use the word condense. So it is a process of condensation of the qualitative data. Again, I have written here like without losing its meaning. So that's the data condensation and with capturing of its significant idea. So all those significant thing and how you will come to know something as significant. Yes, because here you are not having any p value or something. So anything, any words or any sentences or any paragraph which is directly or indirectly related to your research question is significant idea. So you have to keep in mind your research question. So what is a code? So if I need to define a code, code is basically a word or a short phrase which capture the essence of the data. And code is always the researcher generated. Participants, they never say in code. It is the researcher generated interpretation which gives the attribute meaning to each data. And again, as a researcher, you need to detect if there are any pattern in this coding or in this short phrase or words or any category or theme is there or not. That we will discuss how to detect pattern and the category and theme. So Harvey, who was a famous ethnographer, he has said that we should not expect our transcript to be like a towel that when we would wring out all and expect the codes to fall all over the floor like water. What does he mean by this? Like generally what we do, if you wring the towel, water will come down and it will there on the floor. So transcript is not something like that. That means you have to attach meaning to it. That's why we say initially, you know what we used to, I was sharing on day one also yesterday, that initially when we started our data collection, we used to think that if we put our transcript in en vivo, so because we used to think that like quantitative analysis, because in quantitative you put the data and you have the table, you only have to interpret it. Similarly, we used to think that if you put the transcript in en vivo, it will give you everything. Although in en vivo there is a option of auto code, but generally I mean I don't use that auto code function. Generally we go by our own interpretation. So because it's fun also. Like, I don't know, maybe that's why I said, like, everyone cannot do a qualitative study. If you want to be very quick like quantitative, then I think you should think like whether you should go for a qualitative study or not, because it's a process of enjoyment. You enjoy basically the every process of qualitative study, talking to people, then again analyzing the data in data analysis also. You will enjoy the data analysis, because searching out for words and phrases, and when you will find something where you are linking something, then it gives you a kick. It is really an enjoyable activity. So we should not expect our transcript. That's what ethnographer Harvey has said. I'll skip this. So now, what do you mean by a significant idea? So that we have seen that any verbatim or anything which is telling something about the research question is it is significant. So the process of coding that helps us to understand a given phenomena, and it also helps us to basically develop a construct. So construct is again, uh, like in scale development, we talk about this construct, where you have to define the construct, we have to operationalize the construct. So this basically coding also, if you replace the overall sentences with one term, it helps you to operationalize the construct also, or to develop the construct. And it also helps to develop if there are any theory. So if you are going for a grounded theory approach, or you are going inductively on a topic, then again it can help you to generate a theory, or even if not generate, at least trying to fill some gap in the existing theory. So that can be done. So which method of coding should I use? If this question comes to you, like which method of coding should you use? So again, that depends on our research question and our research method. If you are doing an interpretive design, like a interpretive phenomenology or interpretive ethnography or grounded theory, then you should use both the first and second cycle coding method. If you are only going for a qualitative, descriptive or descriptive phenomenology, then you can stop at the first cycle coding method. So now there are two types of research question. There is a ontological and there is a epistemological research question. So this ontological research question that intends to capture participant reality, and this epistemological, it tries to understand a phenomena. So now whenever you are doing a coding, you basically, you see your lenses. I mean, you use your lenses. So whenever you see a camera, in camera, you will find that there are lenses with which you can zoom out and zoom in on a particular, on a particular uh, article, or on a particular scenery or scenario or individual, depending on where you are taking the picture. Similarly, whenever you are doing a coding, the researcher acts like a filter, like lenses and like angle. So what is lenses? Lenses means your eyes or your brain will zoom in or zoom out a respective, excerpt or verbatim. You filter also. You apply filter many times. So you filter out the important data or the important verbatim from the whole data set, and you change your angle also. What is angle? When we take a photograph, if you change the angle, doesn't many times that appearance of the picture looks much better, or the view, it entirely gets changed, and that looks very appealing and very beautiful. So that's how you should apply your own coding lenses. Your own means here there is this we have taken from Saldana, and he always says that researchers should develop their coding lenses, coding filters, and coding angle. And this angle is very important when you are applying a second cycle coding method, because then you see the data and you try to see the data from a different perspective, from a different angle, and then you will find something very innovative and something very new. For example, here he has given this statement, like, there is no place in this country for illegal immigrants. Round them up and send those criminals back to where they come from. So if it is just an example of coding lenses, filters, and angles. So if there are various types of coders, so the first type of coder will say, will pick up this sentence. like there is no place in this country. So he will probably pick up this no place, because in here we have seen that in grounded theory, you generally emphasize on processes. So if grounded theory person will say it as a no place. If there is an ethnographer, he will focus more on the emigration issue. And if there is a critical race theorist, he will say that it is a xenophobia. So, depending on the type of researcher, you might give us different code to any paragraph or any data which is in the form of a words. The way you have written that out of pocket expenditure. Again, you have to practice this phenomena of bracketing, which we have learned, that keep your brain aside and keep yourself unbiased during the coding. So again, this is said. This is a metaphor for coding. That coding generates the bones of your analysis, and integration of those bones will assemble your data into a working skeleton. So this is for the coding. So basically they are the individual bones, and if you assemble that bones, then there is a working skeleton. And then if you put, later we will see that analytical memo and all, then it is like a flesh, and then the whole person is there in front of you in terms of the outcome of your research. And again, it is said that quantitative analysis calculates the meaning, and quantitative analysis calculates the mean, and qualitative analysis calculates the meaning. So your role as a researcher is mainly to interpret the meaning. Now, it is said that coding and analysis, it is not synonym, because coding, you are only doing the data condensation. Now, arranging that codes to a working skeleton in the form of a storytelling or in the form of a sequence, that is very important. So don't think that if you have done the coding, you are done with the analysis. Now you have to draft a story making that coding. That means if you just remember that example of coding as an individual bone, so you have to integrate those individual bones to make a skeleton. Again, coding is cyclical in nature. Why we are calling it cyclical? Because you do the coding for the first time, and then again you do this exercise twice and thrice. Not as a part of only the first cycle coding method. Again, you do iterations. We will learn this why you do many iterations, because by many iterations you are refining your codes. So that's why it is cyclical in nature, and codes and categories are separate entity. You will find that there is a different school of thought. There are people who write like codes and sub theme and theme. They don't write this word category. There are people who write like code. When you club these codes, you will form category, and when you club the category, you will form a theme. So, but if you go by Saldana, we'll see that how this codes makes a merge into the category, and how the merging of category makes the theme. Now there are many personal attributes. There should be quality. In fact, for doing a coding, there should have some qualities in the researcher. First thing is the logical and the critical thinking, because of course the meaning which you are inferring, because they are the words and you have to give a meaning to that word using a short phrase or few words. So you should be logical and critical thinker. Perseverance is very important, because coding is not like you cannot do it in 3 days or 4 days. It takes around a month or 1.5 months if there are 18 to 20 transcript, because it takes time, and the whole day you cannot do the coding work. You do it like every day 1 hour or 2 hours, so that you are tuned to your data and slowly you move. And then you should be flexible enough. Why flexible? Because if some other idea is coming on day 1, probably when you reach to day 10 or day 12, and if you are again revisiting your codes, then you might feel like changing your initial codes. So that's why you should be flexible enough to accept that change. You should be creative, and you should be rigorously ethical. We say it rigorously ethical because you should not leave something which is an outlier, or which is a deviant case. So you should present the idea of that person also, which is not fitting into like the other people have said. So that's why deliberately, and in here also the researcher reflexivity will play a role. So if you are, the way we were discussing yesterday, that if you are a sufferer of a particular phenomena and you are doing the study of the same people who are suffering, then you should be ethical not to hide the some part of it, or not to selectively represent or present the result. So the bracketing helps in keeping yourself rigorously ethical, and you should have extensive vocabulary. So for this, I think vocabulary, this AI, which we found, it helps you many times in making some short, good phrases, and suggesting some title of your research also. So these are the attributes of the coding. Now, what is the difference between the codes and theme? So code is basically a process. So the process of coding is basically, if you are decorating a room, how you do it. So you put something in one fashion, and then again see it how it is looking. Then again, like you move the sofa, or you put the curtain like this, you put flower vase in one corner, and then again you see, no, it is not looking that like that. Let's keep this in that corner. So this is the, if you can just recall the process of coding, those of you who have done it, if not done it, then again you can recall the process of arranging a room. So you keep on trying, and you keep on seeing like in which setting the room looks beautiful. Similar thing you will do with the coding. So keep on refining your codes and seeing ultimately there will be a stage, then you will feel very satisfied. Then what is a theme? Basically, theme is an outcome of coding. When you categorize, when you merge these codes, you make category. And when you merge the categories, you make the theme. So that's the theme. Now, when you should be starting your coding process? So we have seen yesterday that there are two types of analysis. There's a linear sequential. When you collect all the data, then you start making transcript, and then you start coding the data. But that is not a very good way of doing the analysis. Best is you have collected the data. Let's say you have conducted one interview or two interview today. So you go and make the transcript and start doing the analysis. So analysis means start doing the coding of your data. And it should not be done like after all the field work has been completed, because then you will be losing on very vital information which you could have collected if you would have done the coding and analysis simultaneously. And maybe when you start doing the code, it may not be very final code, it may be a very crude one, but still you start with it and don't rely on your memory for for writing your reflection whenever you are making a code. And that's what it said, that you have to capture your thoughts, whatever is there in the brain, because we know that the researcher and the participants, they co-create the story. So your co-creation, your part is a reflection or analytical memo. So whenever you are coding, whatever is happening or going into the mind, you should reflect that whenever you are coding your data. So there are many types of coding. The first is your lumper coding or splitter coding. So what is the lumper coding? Lumper coding is also known as the macro coding. When you replace a big paragraph with a very short phrase or 2 to 3 words, which is known as the lumper coding. What is a split, which is also known as the macro coding? What is a splitter coding? So when you break the sentences into many words and you break your paragraph into smaller codable movement, then it is known as the splitter coding. For example, this we have also taken from Saldana. Yeah, can someone read this?
I'm not telling you to do this to depress you or scare you, but it was a reality for me. I thought I was so ready for this population because I had thought of the group of kids. But this is such a unique situation in the inner city school. No, I should not, I should take that back. It's not as much as of a unique situation anymore. There are more and more schools that are running into inner city schools, I really had to learn about the kids. I had to learn the languages, gang signals, what music followed, what t-shirts they could wear on certain days and not on other days. There was just a lot to learn that I had never even thought about.
So this was like one example of lumper coding, where there are approximately, I think, nine sentences and one big paragraph. So if you have to replace this big paragraph with one word, so one word is like a lot to learn from this. This is an example which we have taken from Saldana. You can replace it with any other word also. This is just for example. You can replace it with any like many of you can type it here. What are the other single few words phrase you can reflection? Okay, yes, anybody else? Again, if I have to practice about the splitting, so that was a lumper. Okay, Dr. Ravi has written learning curve among kids. Good. Now coming to the type of splitting coding. So in splitting coding, the same paragraph you can see like there are various colors which we have used like yellow, green. So like one thing is I'm not telling you to do this to depress or to scare you, but it was a reality for me. So you can code it like the first sentence as reality. The second was like I thought I was so ready for this population. I had thought of the groups of kids. So here it's written, I thought I was ready. So what the author is doing, he is taking some words or phrase from the sentence and he is coding it. So it is known as the type of in vivo coding. In vivo means it is taking the words because here he has taken the words like I thought I was ready. So that's why it's a type of in vivo coding. This is again unique situation of the inner city school. So he has replaced it with the unique situation. And then there's sentence like there are many more schools that are running in the inner city school. So more inner city schools. And this last one, like they had to learn the language and gang signals. This is the had to learn a lot. So this is an example of splitting coding, where the one paragraph, it was broken down into many sentences, and each sentence was given a code. You can use, like in this case, they have used mostly the en vivo code using the few words from the paragraph or from the sentences and giving a name to it.
Ma'am, in vivo coding is done with splitting, like it's a part of the process, or it can be a separate method in itself.
So splitting is the process. The code which you see here, that is an in vivo code. Macro or the lumper coding is a part of process, means you can give the one code to the whole paragraph like we have seen the previous one, this one, or you can break down these sentences into many parts and give a name to each of these sentences. That is a splitting, that is a process. But again, the type of code which has been used here, that is the en vivo code. We will discuss more about the types of code later. We are just discussing the process, how you are, whether you are condensing. So basically, in the first case here, you are condensing the data a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, you are not condensing to that much. Obviously, the data condensation in splitting is much less than if you go by the macro code or the lumper coding.
Thank you.
Now, coming to the code proliferation. So how much code you should make? Because if you will use the splitting code, there will be many codes. If there are like interview which is there for like half an hour and there are 20 to 25 interviews, then there will be many codes. So how you should decide which coding method you should use? Should you use the splitting or should you use the lumper coding method? So there should be ideally mix of the two. And you can see like if one paragraph, if someone has said and you can replace it by one word or by few words, it is entirely the discretion of the researcher. It is up to you. You can either use a lumper or a coda, but generally it is said that use the mix of two. And generally how much code you should have. So if your now total number of code is like 50 to 300, it is said that that is a manageable number of codes. So just to avoid this, because initially, but as a novice, if you're starting the coding process for the first time or for then I think it's better to code each and everything, because that's a process. Later, there are many codes which will not be used, but at least you have done that so that you will not leave any of your data corpus. So, but again, it is said that you should quote a very essential part of the data corpus, which is again related to your research question. And you should use the combination of lumper and splitter code, and the total number of codes should be ranging from 50 to 300. And you should select quotes repeatedly. Quotes are like the verbatim, and then codes are like when you give a word to it. So you can select these words, or these you can select the quotes repeatedly, and again you can subsume the smaller codes into the broader codes. We'll see these process how we can subsume. And this is very important that you should keep on writing the analytical memo, because analytical memo is important, and it is again like a flesh and muscle of your skeleton, which you have created using the code. So if you write the analytical memo, then you can make a whole story. And again, you have to repeat the coding cycle, means the first iteration and the second iteration. At least 2 iteration you should do to refine your codes. So there are 2 types of coding cycle. We have been using this since yesterday. So there's a first cycle coding methods, and there's a second cycle coding method. So in today's session, I'll be discussing mostly the first cycle coding method. And then in the next session, I'll be discussing the second cycle coding method, because when you are well versed with the first cycle coding method, then you can easily go for a second cycle coding method. So what are the various first cycle coding method? So there is something known as the attribute coding. If you see the Saldana, he has mentioned approximately 32 types of coding. But that includes all the literature, poetry, drama, art. But we have picked up only, I think, 7 to 8 types of coding. Type of coding. Why? Because we thought like this, using this, you can go ahead with your data analysis in health especially. So there is a attribute coding, then there is something known as the descriptive coding, then there is a emotional coding, then there is a in vivo coding, which we have just discussed. Then there is something known as the magnitude coding, then there is a narrative coding, and then there is a process coding. There is a causation coding also, we'll discuss that. So these are the 8 types of coding methods which generally we use in case of the qualitative data analysis in health. Okay, that is there, causation coding. So now coming to the first type of coding method, which is the attribute coding. So what is this attribute coding? So that initial part we have seen now, where you write the identifier of the person. You write the occupation, you write the age, you write the gender. So all these things these will come under the heading of attribute coding. So basically, when you are coding about the research site, about the participant, or about the material, it is known as the attribute coding. Like urban, rural, if you are taking both participants, you can give them the locality wise, their age, their gender, their qualification, their designation, etc. So this is known as the attribute coding. Generally, it is used as an identifier, because if you have gone through the qualitative research article, you will see that in the bracket they write participant number 6, male, doctor or whatever, like Asha. So something like that. So these are the attribute coding. So attribute coding is basically, it is you are giving, it is also known as the socio-demographic codes. In this, you don't, of course, you don't write the name, but it is like you are giving the context to that person whose verbatim you are going to use. And it is usually there in the beginning of the data set, or rather than you don't embed these code into the data. So it starts with the attribute code, and we'll see in the QDA minor how we will put this. Now, here also you give the basic descriptive information, like if you are doing something on school children, you can give the school name or participant characteristics, and it is applicable to all type of qualitative studies. So attribute coding should be there in all type of this qualitative study. For example, this example also it is given in the Saldana that participant name was Barry. Although we don't include the name in the transcript, we remove the name because it is a direct identifier. So participant, then the age of the person, then the grade of the person, gender, the sexual orientation, social class, and data format interview. So this was the attribute code. Now next is your descriptive code. What is a descriptive coding? Descriptive coding is you are describing something. So you are assigning a label to the data and you are summarizing basically that data. So basically this descriptive code is mostly, it is a form of a lumper coding because 3, 4, 5 sentences, you just replace these 4, 5 sentences with some descriptive word. So it is more towards the type of lumper coding like hospital, houses, injections or something like that. So this is an example of descriptive coding. Yes, can someone read this?
My son Barry went through a really tough time about probably started the end of fifth grade and went into the sixth grade. When he was growing up young in the school, he was a people pleaser and his teachers loved him to death. Two boys in particular that he chose to try to emulate would not were not very good for him. They were very critical of him. They put him down all the time, and he kind of just took that and really kind of internalized it. I think for a long time, in the time period in the fifth grade, early sixth grade, they really just kind of shunned him altogether. So his network, as he knew, it was gone.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Ajay. So you can see if you have to do the descriptive coding. So first sentence like my son student went through a really tough time about this fifth grade when he went into the sixth grade. So it is basically author has written replace this with the student teacher relationship. And then here this whole sentence he has replaced it with the bad role models. So this is a type of lumper coding which we have seen initially. The whole paragraph again he has replaced it with few words. Again, this is just for example. You can choose any other word also for this because qualitative it is subjective. The same, I'm repeating it many times that the code which you give and which some other person give, there can be when it is quite opposite can be there. Opposite means of course it will have the same sentiments, but the picking up of those verbatim might vary from one person to another person. So that was like a descriptive code. Third type of code is the emotional coding. What is the emotion coding? So you try in the beginning, beginning of this presentation, you have picked out the emotions. Remember anger and sorrow and the grief and all those where you have put it in the positive and negative this thing. That was a kind of emotional code. So whenever you read any transcript and you start picking up the emotions from that and you give a word to it, it is known as the emotional coding. So you basically code the participants' sentiments, their feeling, their reactions, and the excitement, which is associated with that, like hopelessness or anxiety or denial, acceptance, or pessimism or hopeful. So emotional coding basically, but Saldana says like it depends on the author also. Like maybe because generally it is inferred by the researcher. The participant has said something because generally the emotions are not recalled. And many times it is not you who took the data collection part. Somebody else took the data collection part. So that's why if you make this verbatim where you have all that emotions also, then doing this emotional code is a little easy. And again, because it is your inference, so we make this assumption that it is assumed that it is being inferred by the researcher, this emotional coding. So you have to justify your role in case of an emotional coding. So are you keeping, because again, here comes the role of bracketing. So are the participants feeling hopeless, or it is you who is feeling hopeless for the participant? So is it your feeling or it's the participant's feeling? That's why it is said that ideal research would be like the person who has done the data collection, you only do the transcription process and you only do the coding process. But generally, you will see that once you become senior and you have to lead a project, many times it is not possible that you go. But again, if you go in the field and take few interviews also, not all, then also you will have some idea regarding that ongoing process. So you should be in the field whenever there is a data collection process, and you can also do some interviewing part so that you can then relate more, and then again your inference will be, it is not only on the basis of the data which the your data collection team has collected for you. So again, like I said, the bracketing is important whenever you are applying this emotional code. Now coming to in vivo coding. So basically in vivo, what is in vivo coding? So we have just seen that in vivo coding is like picking up the sentences from the excerpts and then you apply a code. So in vivo coding is a more type of a splitting code. Like we have seen, descriptive is more of a lumper coding method. Splitting is this in vivo coding is more because you give a name to each and every sentence and you use the participant's word. So their word you choose and you code it. Like they denied treatment, no mercy, or too expensive, something like that. So the same on the same excerpt, if you see the example of in vivo code. So first one, like since he's saying like my son Barry went uh, through a really tough time. So this tough time was in vivo code, and then this was like two boy in particular that he chose to try to emulate wouldn't be very good of him, and they really put him down all the time. So the kind of this in vivo is the like put him down, and then he was a people pleaser, so that people pleaser is there as a in vivo code, and then the next one is your shunned him, the last one, because in this time period in the 5th grade and early 6th grade they really just kind of shunned him altogether. So this was like an example of in vivo code, and you can see here there are 4 codes which the author has applied. Uh, in the taking the example of generally it is the mix of a lumper and the splitter code. So in vivo code is very helpful. Rather, what we, in fact, the software which is the in vivo, that is by taking then this name only. In vivo code you should use when you are beginning the research, and even if you are not beginning, if you think that you should be as close to the data or very near to the participant words, then you can use the in vivo code. So when you are there in the early phase of analysis, or you are still deciding what to code, if you're not finding any appropriate word, at least you can select the words from the participant and you can code it. And still you are figuring out what to give the names to that code, then also you can use the in vivo code. So we have seen the 4 types of coding. The first one we have discussed about the attribute code. What is attribute code? You give the socio-demographic characteristics just as a means, just to remember. You write the occupation, you write the gender of the person, and then you write what is the profession and the age of the person also. So that is the attribute coding. Then we have seen the descriptive code. Descriptive code is like you replace paragraph with one words which is describing the situation, that is the descriptive code. Then you do the emotional coding. Emotional coding is when there are emotions or sentiments, then you do the emotional coding. Then you do the then there is a type of in vivo coding. In vivo coding is a type of like splitting coding, when you split the sentences and then you code those sentences by taking some word of that particular sentence and coding it. And that is very helpful if you are in the first cycle coding method, or if you are a novice researcher doing the coding, or if you don't want, if you are very lazy and don't want to search and nothing is coming to your mind, But just as a start, this thing you have to start, then this is the best way, and Vivo coding is the best way to start with this coding process. Then comes your process coding. So what is a process coding? Process is basically the happening of something. That's why it is also known as the action coding. So how can you do the process coding? So in the process coding, always the ing is there, like walking, checking report, hospitalization, helping. This is your process coding. So this is the example of process coding. Again, the same excerpt. So the first 3-4 sentences, my son Barry went through a really tough time. So this process coding is like pleasing people. Initially, it was people pleaser, but here, since if you are using the, and this is helpful when we'll see the second cycle coding method, when you have to, we will see what is the importance of this process coding also. So this pleasing people is a process coding. Again, the 4 sentences, like 2 boys in particular that he chose to emulate, won't be very good of him here, since he's taking a kind of internalizing it. So the process code here is the internalizing rejection, and the next is your losing your network. So in all these cases, you can see that the word ing is there. And remember the grounded theory. In grounded theory, we have learned that we focus more on the processes. That's why this process coding becomes very important if you are using the grounded theory approach as a method of your qualitative data inquiry. Now, next type of coding is the magnitude coding. So what is this magnitude coding? It is also known as the value coding. And as the name suggests, like in quantitative, you write like magnitude, we generally say like 100, 200, 400. But it is again, this magnitude coding is very important for descriptive qualitative study. Like example, if someone is saying very strongly, or I have very moderate pain, or low pain, or no pain, or I am in very much anger, or I am in very much love, something like that. So this largely, very, very less, very low, where it is quantifying something, that is known as the magnitude coding. So again, if you compare these 3 types of code, so you can see if you are using a descriptive code, the same you have used the student-teacher relationship and bad role models. If you are using the en vivo code, it is like tough time, people pleaser, put him down and shunned him. And if you use the process code, then again you write ing like pleasing people, internalizing rejection, and losing the network. So this is the comparison of 3 style of coding. You can take any style which you think that is appropriate for you and you are comfortable doing this. So we have seen the attribute coding, we have seen the descriptive code, we have seen the emotional code, then we have seen the en vivo code, we have seen the process coding, and we have seen the magnitude coding. So next comes the causation code. So what is a causation? So it is something like in the quantitative. In quantitative, you just do this causation. Now there is a cause and there is a effect. So that causation coding, it attempts it is generally done by picking up some words, like what people believe about their events and their cause. If you think you want to explore the hidden emotions or hidden part of a particular behavior, so you should be looking out for words such as these words, like because, you can see this because, so, therefore. There is preceding something and there is afterwards, it is like that. If it wasn't for, as a result of, the reason is, that's why. If something of this is there and there will be preceding something of this, and then there will be something followed by this. So then this will be used as making this causality thing, that this event has led to this outcome. So this is the causation coding. So this is again helpful in, if you are generating some theory, this is very helpful, this causation coding. Now, how to decide what to code? So, like I said, initially you may start doing coding everything if you are not able to identify what is important and what is not important. Once you do 2-3 qualitative research, then probably you will be well versed what to code and what not to code. But again, you keep remembering the research question. In fact, you should always write research question. That's what Saldana says, that you should write research questions on a paper and paste it in the front of your desktop or laptop, wherever you are doing the analysis, so that by constant seeing the research question, it will constantly remind you what to code and what not to code. But anything which looks interesting to you in your data, which are the words, anything surprising, any recurrent pattern which you can find out, that is important. So what is the length of the text? If somebody asks, like, what is the length of the text which I can code in a transcript? We have just seen that Kari story. There is no such limitation. There's no such rule. It depends on you. If you are using a lumper code, of course, you can replace like 6, 7 sentence with one word. So you can code a whole paragraph to one word, or you can again use a splitting code like NVivo, and you can code each and every sentence. That is up to you. It is totally up to you and up to the research question and how comfortable you are. But again, if you use splitting coding, it is said that you are very grounded to the data, you are very close to the data, and there are very less chances that you will be missing out on few things. So that's why it is recommended that you use the NVivo coding most of the time, and then of course, if somewhere it is needed, you should use the lumper coding also. Then how to decide what to label? So Dr. Rini is asking, can we use different type of codes? Yes, you have to use. It is not like, and you mentioned in the methodology also, what types of coding method, the first cycle coding method you have used. Generally, we all use attribute, whatever we have told you, generally we use all type of coding. We use process code also, we use descriptive codes also, we use NVivo code also, and attribute code, generally it is done. Causation code, of course, you have to see your research question. If your research question is like asking why, then of course you should look for those causality thing. So you should use all type of coding method. So you should label a text if it appears several times in the. So narrative coding is again, it is a kind of, you can say it is a kind of descriptive coding only, where the participant's narration you are replacing. Exact example, I'm not able to quote it right now, Priyanka, but narrative coding is again, I think I'll see in any specific example, because if right now I'll tell something, it may not be very clear to you how it is different from other type of coding method. Okay. So currently I'm not able to give you any example. So now you should label what you should label. So you should label a text if it appears several times across the transcript. If it amazes you, that's what Saldana writes, that if while doing the transcription process and while analyzing the data, if something amazes you, then you should code it. And if the interviewer has said that that is very important for him or her, then also you should code it. You read something similar in the previous literature, because you have done the literature search also. And if something is there in the previous literature, then also you should definitely code it. And if it is related to the theory or the concept which you have drafted, then also you should code it. So before you begin to code, which approach you should adopt? So you should either, again, we have discussed we have discussed this, that you can use a deductive framework or you can use an inductive framework. And we have seen the advantages and disadvantages of both inductive and deductive framework. So if you have a preconceived notion, you can use that as a deductive framework, or you remain open-minded if you don't have any framework, or you can use the combination of two. Means you may start with something, because some categorization you have beforehand also. When you draft your interview guide, you take help of the literature. So you may start with that initial coding framework, and later, if you find that it is not suiting to your data, then you can add or you can delete something in the existing coding framework. So we say that do not hesitate to code plenty of text in the first cycle. That's what I said. That if you are clueless initially what to leave, and if you are a kind of person where you don't want to leave anything, it's better to code. So don't, like we say, thumb rule of initial coding is don't think right or wrong, just do it. So as a researcher, you have got the total freedom of doing it. There's no guideline. Again, this is one exercise, like you have to extract one or more codes from this paragraph. Yes, can someone read this?
I wake up around 6, start my day with getting kids to ready for school, then gym. To save my time, I had my breakfast in the kitchen. I always make tea and eat omelets and banana while catching up on the emails on my phone.
Yes, thank you, Priyanka. So yes, can anyone give a code, any type of code, if you want to, give too many codes, or one code, or en vivo, process, emotion, magnitude, whatever. So typical day, lumper, okay, yes, good. And anybody else? Ready? Priya is writing. Anybody else? Homemaker's dilemma. Dr. Rini has written. Good. Morning schedule. Morning routine. Okay. Process coding. Waking up, eating, catching up. Good. So if you like the way Priyanka has written, if you break it, then again, when you merge it, it will be easy for you to remain grounded in the data, saving time. Yes, many people might write multitasking. The plight of a woman in the morning when she is not having even time for the breakfast, something like that. So it depends. If you want to do the emotional coding, probably the lack of self-care, something like that. So this is you can see, depends on the on a person how he is doing it. So all type of coding is possible. You can see here there were many types of code. You can do the en vivo code also, like early waking up, or the starting, like all those process coding, because everything, it is like ing catching up and waking up and starting the day. So again, we have seen this deductive repetition of the initial discussion, deductive and inductive coding. So deductive coding, it is good for descriptive research, because again, I said that if you are a researcher, if you don't have much experience, or if it is a multi-site research, then you may start with a deductive framework. Or if you are doing something for a program evaluation and you have to use some system framework, health system framework, then you can start with the descriptive framework. And in such research, you have idea about the major theme and categories, and then you put those codes into respective categories. And the researcher, you basically, as a researcher, we pick the code from the interview or from the transcript, and we put that to the respective category. So we don't create our own category. So that's the deductive framework. And that's why it is known as the top-down approach. Why top-down? Because you start with a theme and then you select the code. Whereas if you see the inductive, you start with the code and then you merge those codes and then you reach to the top, which is the theory, which is known as the bottom-up approach. So here we start with the prior decided codes or prior decided category, and then we find the excerpts to put in that particular codes. Inductive coding is the other way around. We start with the data, we find the codes, and then we merge the codes in the form of a category. So this is good for exploratory research or a grounded theory research. And in such research, we don't have any prior idea about the major theme or code. And the researcher basically allows theme or codes to emerge from the data. So that's why it is known as the ground up approach. So the first one is the top down, and then it is the ground up approach. So this is the inductive and deductive. We will see also in the QDA minor how to start if you are doing an inductive framework and how to start if you are doing a deductive framework. Or many times you can use a hybrid approach. You start with deductive, but when you are seeing your data and if it is not fitting up exactly, then you can create some more category of your own, or you can delete some existing category also. So for steps for coding, if you are using a hybrid approach, you create some initial codes and you go through the transcript, and then you decide what to code in that particular transcript. And then you add new codes if you think that existing code is not able to capture all the details of your data. And then you group those codes into the categories and those categories into the theme. Then again, you see the data and then you revise your code book and you finally write the result or the interpretation. So Dr. Rini is writing, suppose I do a program evaluation and exploring. So hybrid approach, yes, Dr. Rini, you can do a hybrid approach. You can start with the deductive and you can do this as a hybrid. So yes, is it same as abductive? Yes, I guess so. Dr. Priyanka, it is same as abductive approach. But I'll see this term also. So now this, you have to create some initial code from the following research question. So this was like one research question. What motivated you for taking the COVID vaccine? If this is the question, and if you have to start with some initial code, what code you will create for this? The second is like, what did you find frustrating in the process of vaccination? And then how had you reacted on that? So if you have to draft some initial code, how you can do? You can write this here. You can write like, yes, can someone write break? Okay, and Vivo code, first one. So you can write like initial code like motive. Okay, Dr. Ravi, bus after this slide, I will give the break. So what motivated you for taking COVID vaccine? So it is, you can write here, yes, facilitators of COVID vaccine, fear of frustrating or fear of contracting the disease, and your reaction. Okay, so just as an exercise, there can be subjective interpretation of these questions about these initial codes. Fear is, yes, fear is there. Dr. Prashant is also writing. Dr. Arun is also writing emotion in the second one. Okay. So yes, I think, what is the time? Let me see. It is 3:11. So 5 minutes break. How much time should be there as a break? We were on break, Dr. Bhavika, for 7 or 10 minutes rather. But we are starting. We are restarting. So we did, so I'll again summarize what we did. So we started with the process of coding. We have seen like the process of coding is something like we used to highlight in our undergraduate days, writing some important point, pasting stickers, making sticky notes and writing some notes towards the end or towards the side. Again, we have seen like we have clubbed the way you have done the pile sorting. You have created a free list, some naming the few items and then categorizing them in a pile. So similar concept we'll apply for the coding, that you generate codes. Now what is a code? Code is a short phrase of few words which you use to condense your data. And there are various types of codes, and there's a style of coding. So the style of coding is categorized into two parts. There is a lumper code and there's a splitter code. Lumper code is when you, a very big paragraph, when you give one short phrase or name to it, it is known as the lumper code. When you split those big paragraph into sentences and give code to those sentences, that is known as the splitting type of coding process. Then coming to the types of codes, there are approximately 32 types of codes which you can use, but generally in health, we use mostly the 8 to 9 types of coding. And you should mention these types of coding. And as raised by one participant, you can use all type of coding method in your transcript and in your data analysis. So the first type is attribute code. What is attribute code? You give the attribute of the participant which you code, and generally that is universal for all type of qualitative research method. So the attribute codes are like maybe occupation of the person, the gender of your participant, age of your participant, except the name if he is belonging to rural area or urban area, any particular hospital, then you can write that. So this is the attribute code. Second was like the descriptive code. So descriptive code is more like a lumper code when you describe the something, a big paragraph as a descriptive code. And then it's your process code. When you write like ing, then it is a process coding. Then there is a en vivo coding. What is en vivo coding? Which is a very common type of coding method which we use in the grounded theory and many other type of data analysis. And this is a first, this whole 8 types of coding which we are discussing, this is first cycle coding method. So first cycle coding method is like you have started with your data and you are using these basic coding methods. And en vivo is like you pick up some words from the sentences and you use that word to give a name to the code. That is en vivo code. Then come your magnitude code. So if you are saying like I am too anxious or I am very fat or I am very small, something like that, showing the magnitude of either emotion or any characteristics, then you use the magnitude coding. Then there is a emotional coding. So if there are sentiments or emotions, then you use the emotional codes. Then you use the this thing, causation code. So causation code is like if something is like if your research question is like why a particular phenomena is there. So the answer to this question why, then you can see for the words like therefore, because of, it happened due to. If something like that is there, then you should see like what is preceding that and what is after that. And then you can give a causation code to it. And then we have seen the inductive and deductive framework. And then like one participant suggested, like I think Priyanka has said like abductive. So yes, abductive is the combination of deductive and the inductive. When you use both the approach together, you start with deductive, but in the process of doing the analysis, it becomes inductive also, because if some codes are not there and you add a code or any category is not there, you add that category, then it becomes a abductive type, means combination of both deductive and inductive. So now coming to the code book. So we often discuss about this code book. What is this code book? So this code book should include the name of the code, the definition of the code if possible, and example of what to include in the code. And if you describe your code book, because you share your code book, you can share it to the other person also. What happens if there are multiple people, they are doing the analysis, then there is a main person who is the code editor. And there are 2-3 people who are doing the analysis. So all those 2-3 people will share their code book to the main code editor. And he will decide upon the final decision of what codes, a name, the type, etc. So that is again one process which we will discuss, how to manage this teamwork of coding process. So what does it mean if I say that new code is emerging? So suppose it says like I am planning a study, I have collected the data and the research question is like cleanliness, about the perception of people regarding the cleanliness of a public hospital. So I have decided two codes from the beginning, like feeling satisfactory and feeling unsatisfactory. And I have conducted the in-depth interview of the visitors who are coming to the hospital. And after the transcription, I have started the process of coding. So during the process of coding, if I see that there are many verbatim which is not fitting into these two types of code, which is like neither satisfactory, not unsatisfactory. So I may write a new type of code which is not sure or something like that. Again, before you start the process of coding, you should read and reread your transcript many times. Why? Because, and we will do this activity also, before you start the process of coding, you should do first two transcript or even first transcript a manual coding. Manual coding means take the printout of it and just highlight it and write the code on this towards the side. So you should read the transcript thoroughly, and it's better that you start your data collection, data analysis after one or two transcript is ready. So keep a notebook for that, keep a log of that. Now, once you have started the process of coding, now you have to group that code. Again, this is a very important thing. You do not have to use all codes which you have created. And you will find out that once you start the process of merging the codes, there will be many codes which are not related to your research question. They will be left unutilized. So that is okay. You don't need to use all the codes, but as a process of doing it, because you don't want to lose on your data, it's better that you code, and the number of codes, it should range from 50 to 300. So that you can use, like number of codes also as one of the criteria, when to stop and how much to code. And then the way you have done the pile sorting, so you merge these codes. The two small codes, you subsume these two small codes into bigger codes. We will see this, how to do that actually, but I'm just telling you the process. And then you have to keep in mind the process of this forming the categories. So you have to be very creative and open-minded in forming the categories. And then you have to give a label to this category. And this we will see later how to find out the connections. This we will see in the second cycle coding. So I'm just skipping this because this is just a repetition. Yes, this is important, which is the shop talking. So what is a shop talking? Saldana has also explained this. So this is a phenomena, like whenever you are doing a qualitative research, you should talk to your peer group very regularly and colleague and advisor, because many times when you vocalize your thoughts, then somehow something clicks and a new idea emerges. And you can ask some questions, and they can also ask some questions which you have not thought of. So it says that verbal articulation with another person, it tells you about the data analysis and whether you are going whether you are going in right direction or not. So shop talking should be done throughout the conduction and throughout the analysis of a qualitative study. Generally, if you are doing it in team, so you are discussing with your colleague or with your juniors also, because it's a team. So there will be resident, the senior resident, the junior resident, and there will be faculties. So you can discuss, you can keep a meeting and you can discuss about the codes and about the type of analysis which is emerging. Now, the coding framework, I think this we have discussed. From similar study, you can take this coding framework, or you can again develop it from some expert consensus. So this is just the example of a manual coding. We'll see this and I'll also show.
When you have a lot of data from research, like interviews, focus groups, or field studies, how do you begin to analyze them? And we have a lot of qualitative data. Essentially, what we want to do is try to uncover themes in the data. And we do this by exploring similarities and relationships between different chunks of the data. This process is called thematic analysis. Now, there are many ways you can do a thematic analysis. I'm really into more visual means of analysing because I think it helps teams to see those similarities and relationships in the data more clearly. So I'm going to show you a very cheap and easy method of performing a thematic analysis in a very visual way. And all you need are these materials, which all UX teams have. So we're going to start off by printing your transcripts and field notes and going through and highlighting important sections that are relevant to your research question. I find this is a great activity to do with your team. You can run a team analysis session where you give each team member a transcript to read and highlight. They can also make notes in the margin of anything that comes to mind. Once complete, they then pass that transcript on to the next team member on their left and receive another transcript from the team member on their right. By the end of, say, 2 hours, everyone in your team is engaged with all the raw data, and you've just helped them to have a greater understanding and empathy for their users. Next, we want to cut out all the sections that have been highlighted, and you'll want to fix them onto stickies and get them up on a whiteboard or a wall. When you're cutting out sections of the transcript, it helps to cut out fairly large sections as opposed to really small sections like these, because you want to be able to look at the text and understand enough about the context. Also, make a note of the participant number on each sticky so that you can refer back to the full transcript if you need to. We now have all of these stickies on the whiteboard. What we want to do now is organise these in terms of what they're about. We're adding here what's called descriptive labels. So we're going to go through, group them and name the categories. Once we have our categories, we want to start thinking about how these all relate to each other. And this is the part that most people find the most difficult and also takes some time. So here I'm creating a new grouping because I can see multiple participants talking about approaching cooking in a very flexible way, wanting to throw ingredients together to make a successful dish, and also have ingredients that can be used in many different recipes. So I'm giving this grouping a new name to describe this finding. As we proceed in this way, some of these groups are going to collapse or expand, and we're going to give them new category names and describe those findings. So as you can see, this method is very visual and it can be done collaboratively with your team. You can learn more about this method of thematic analysis and other methods of analysis in our course on user interviews at our UX conference.
So this was just one example of, although we don't recommend the manual coding the way she has told you, but initially when there was no software or even there was no free software, this was again one way. And if you have got limited transcript like 1 or 2, then you can use this method also, like cutting and merging it together, making a category, and then again subsuming those smaller category into a larger category. Again, the process in the software is also the same. The important thing is that it is easy to manage over the software rather than to, see you have just seen like cutting those paper, pasting it. It is a little messy doing this way. And once again, if there are few transcript, it is okay. But if there are many transcript, then again, there will be overload on, while doing the analysis. So you can also do the coding on the Microsoft Word. We'll see. This was one. So I'll first show you the paper or the manuscript. Where have we kept that manuscript? That file area 1. Okay. So this was the paper which I was telling, that this one. Whenever I tell her to wear slippers, she turns a deaf ear. She never listens. A qualitative descriptive research on the barriers to basic lymphedema management and quality of life in lymphatic filariasis patients in a rural block of Eastern India. So this was the research. This was the this qualitative descriptive. And if you see the methods, and Ria has done most of the work, of course, for this. If you see the analysis, we'll see the how to report it. But again, if you see, she has written like the transcript were entered into the QDA minor light, where the two researchers independently performed which type of, mainly the attribute coding, in vivo coding, process coding, descriptive, emotion, and holistic coding. One more coding which she has used was the holistic coding. And if any coding process hit a block, they listen to the audio tape again to understand the intent and meaning the participant, which they said the data collection and analysis happened concurrently to revise the interview guide to draw upon the emergent area of inquiry. So there was no prior coding framework. We have used an inductive type of coding. And then again, the codes were shared among all the researcher and disagreements were resolved. So like two people were doing the coding, and then again the consensus you can reach with the help of discussing with your team. That can be done. So this was regarding the coding part. And I will be showing you the analysis how to start. So if you have got transcript of this, then what you can do, this is one image which you can see. So like this was one transcript. So when you take the, if you are doing the initial manual coding, then you can keep your transcript like this in this, the middle one. And then timestamp here, again, we have not put it, but the way we have suggested you to put the timestamp like 0 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. And then here you can write these things like, if you see the sentence, I did it, I just for demonstration, I am showing it to you. So if you are starting it afresh, you read your first transcript and do it manually, taking a pen and highlighting it and writing the name of the code. Again, you will repeat this process in QDA also, QDA minor, but with one transcript, you just familiarize yourself with the process of giving code to it if you are doing it for the first time. If you have done it many times, like now, we don't need it because now we have done this process so many times with so many research, not so many, means few research, that we don't, we feel like we can handle the software even without doing the manual code. But those of you who are not very confident, it is up to you again. This is just one way or one suggestion. If you think that you can directly start on the software, that's pretty okay. There's no issue with that. But then also you should read and reread the transcript many times, means at least twice or thrice, and then start the data analysis or make the do the coding process. Otherwise, again, there is a tendency to code everything, and you may miss out on few important things. And again, very important, keep your research question in front of you whenever you start coding it. So like this, you can see the interviewer is asking, can you tell me about when she had this illness and how did you first find it out? So here also, the two questions are being asked. So two questions should not be asked. This is known as the double-barreled question. But again, we also make errors. So you should ask one question at a time and then pose the next question. So the responder is saying that when I called her over the phone, let me enlarge this a little bit. So when I called her over the phone, she sounded so weak and tired. I knew something was not right. She came over and I was shocked to see her in such a bad state. It was like her energy had just drained away. She looked so different. So here I am just using an in vivo code like with drain energy. Again, the responder is saying what kind of difficulties she is facing. So here she's saying that it was very hard for her. This was the interview of the caregiver. So the caregiver is saying that it was very hard for her to stand or even sit for long. So we can say that there is a difficulty in sitting or standing. She could not move her leg anymore. So I am writing like difficulty in moving the other room without slipper or without support. And then again, next code I am writing like it was a painful thing. Again, the type of code I am not mentioning here because once you start with in vivo coding, then you can later on decide, like, which is here, you can do this emotional code also. Like whenever she's writing, like, I was shocked to see her in such a bad state. So you can write like, shocking to see her in this state. So this also, this will be like an emotional code. Again, it was like her energy has just drained. So drained energy is like a descriptive code. So when you are coding, that type of code should be in your mind. You don't need to write in the bracket what is the type of code you are using it. Okay. Am I making myself clear to you? You don't need to write the type of code here. When you are doing the process of coding, you should remember what all coding method, type of code which you are using. And then again, here also, this relative was also in pain, which was very heartbreaking. So it was heartbreaking. Again, you can take it as an emotional code. So this is just, you start doing this process of coding manually on this thing printout. And once you do it few pages, then you start importing the transcript in QDA Miner, and then you start the process of doing the code. Is it clear to everyone? So now I'll go and start doing the demo in QDA Miner. So all of you have downloaded this QDA. Let me see the folder. I need to aliases. Where is the transcript? Data collection. So I'm pasting this folder on my desktop. Why? Because then this QDA doesn't import these transcript. So I am pasting this here. Not working in Mac. Yes, I think yesterday also Dr. Anjali also texted. Yes, sir. Okay, Dr. Abhijit. Yes, he could. Priyanka, could you talk?
Ma'am, I contacted him. He's not working on his. He firstly did not remember, but then when he tried to run it again on his laptop, it was not working again. So it's not running actually.